All right, so now sources are saying that the PGA Tour has changed its mind on yet another decision pertaining to LIV Golf. We're going to dive into those sources and into those rumors in just a second. But the question that we're going to try to dig into here, as we sit with a guy like Jon Rahm having $600 million allegedly on his desk waiting to be signed to join LIV, and now multiple players speaking out against the PIP and once again calling for more changes in management to the PGA Tour. Does all of this indicate an even bigger problem for the PGA Tour? I'll tell you what, Mike, the suspense on this is terrible.
It is, right? Come on.
I think of the old Willy Wonka. Like, the suspense is terrible. I hope it lasts.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's quite wild. So we want you guys to make sure you weigh in the comments. Of course, we're going to respond to all those comments and we'll keep the conversation going in there. But first, let's dive into what this rumor is. And where it originally came from. And we first talked about this dating back probably 2-3 weeks ago now. Mm-hmm. It has to do with the LIV Q School event that's going to be coming up in just 2 weeks. And originally, if you remember, in that episode of the podcast, we talked about how the PGA Tour was allowing its members to participate in the event as long as they left themselves kind of a backdoor out of it, as long as the details and the circumstances, and I'm paraphrasing here, as long as those don't change. Meaning, as of right now, it's not a full LIV event. It's a Q School event for people to win their way into the LIV series.
Right.
So now this comes from two different sources. It was first reported on Twitter from Monday Q Info. And understand that a lot of these Twitter accounts, a lot of them have ins directly with PGA Tour players. Mm-hmm. I've always believed that a lot of these guys are speaking behind the scenes with PGA Tour players and even being fed some information.
Sure.
And that's where we've seen a lot of the stuff that has come to fruition has come through leaks like this. So we don't just write them off. You know, we understand we got to take everything with a grain of salt, but fully, you know, some of these have definitely led to more formal news announcements. So we have to pay attention to them.
Right.
So Monday Q Info first reported saying, among those people signed up for LIV Q School include a major champ, a multi-time tour winner, a top 100 player, and some former decorated AMs. I haven't talked with the players, so I'm not naming them. He said, also hearing, and here's the most important part, also hearing the tour is threatening suspension now if they go, so it might change. Now, in a second, we will speculate on who we believe some of those guys are.
Right.
But to double down on it, another account which broke a lot of news, so we have to pay attention to it, is Flushing It Golf. And they responded saying, I can confirm this. Despite the PGA Tour originally saying just 3 weeks ago that they're allowing members to play in the LIV Promotions event, multiple sources have said they're now threatening them with sanctions. From conversations with players, there are believed to be around 10 PGA Tour members who are affected. Now, importantly, we haven't heard a formal official announcement from the PGA Tour saying that they're backing out of this.
Right.
But here we have allegedly 10 players who are reporting that they're at least getting some indication from the tour that there'll be some sort of penalty if they play. Keep in mind, too, this framework agreement that's looming for the end of the year, December 31st, it's supposed to bring all these tours together.
Right.
Another one of them being the DP World Tour. Well, interestingly, the DP World Tour is not allowing its players to play in this Q School LIV event because it directly conflicts with the Alfred Dunhill. To me, it's a big indication that something's got to happen to get everybody on the same page.
Exactly.
Get in, get out.
Right.
What are you going to do?
Right.
But here again, we were left with even more confusion. What do you think about this whole ordeal?
I don't know. I mean, so DP World, I'm trying to get this straight. DP World Tour, they're not letting anyone play. They want them to play in another event. Now, PGA Tour is saying, we were originally going to let you play, but now you're not. So who's going to play in this thing? Is it going to be people from just other tours, like the Asian tours and things like that? Is it be people that we care about? However, you're saying that in that list of people, there are some pretty big names.
That's what they're saying. So let's take a look. I'm going to pull this up. Now, we dove into this deep an episode or two ago when we talked about the guys who were relegated out of LIV, right? So my mind, I have to start there. I mean, it's very easy to say, if you look at this tweet again, very easy to say a multi-time tour winner, a top 100 player is a little bit harder, but we'll talk about that in a second. A major champ. Understand that could go way back. That could have been somebody who won multiple times years ago. Maybe he's towards the end of his career. These are the types of guys that I would expect might try to play in a Q school event like this if they're not necessarily making it regular on the PGA Tour. We talked about this in depth on a recent episode where we said any of the top tier guys don't need to play in this event.
Right.
The reality is, I'm sure LIV would be more than happy to scoop up another top big name. There's no doubt in my mind. Speaking of which, we'll talk about the $600 million offer and what we think about that in a second. But I look at the guys who are in the LIV drop zone, and this is something we chatted about even more on a recent episode. But these are the guys who are relegated out. Now, there's two guys who are exempt from that. It's Martin Kaymer and Lee Westwood.
So he's a major winner. So we'll move him.
Well, here's the thing.
Maybe not.
What's to say that he wouldn't? I mean, he doesn't need to play in Q school. Kaymer's a major winner. He doesn't need to, but what's to say LIV wouldn't place him in there to play anyway, just to put some more eyeballs on it.
Maybe.
Plus, this is beyond just a Q school. Remember, this does have a purse. I think there was like a $3 million purse. So a guy like Kaymer might throw his hat in the ring, play in this just for the shot at the purse.
Maybe.
You may very well. Now, that's me speculating, but
I don't think he's the guy.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
The other ones I'm thinking is, for sure, the decorated am is Payout, right? Here's a guy who he's relegated out. We talked in depth about him before. He made some good money on LIV, but now he's really got nowhere to go. He's a guy that I could definitely see playing in it.
You just described Chase Koepka too.
Chase Koepka
made money, nowhere to go.
I could see it, but not a PGA Tour winner. As
Correct.
far as the top 100 in the official World Golf Rankings, if you take a look at towards the bottom of that list, there are some names that are definitely not household names, right? I think any one of those guys who are numbers 95 to 100, they're playing a lot on the DP World Tour. A lot of those guys could be in a questionable status as far as having their card or not. These are the types of guys that I could see that could play in that type of event and looking for it. So kind of getting past that is just, it's my kind of more broad way of saying that although on paper, it may seem like a significant event when you say you've got a major champ in the field, you've got a multi-time PGA Tour winner, you've got a top 100 golfer, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be super relevant names.
And this event is happening pretty soon.
It's happening in the second week in December, the same week as the Alfred Dunhill Championship, Links Championship. So here again, we have what I could definitely see would drive a little bit of frustration for PGA Tour players. You know, if you're told one thing and then all of a sudden you're on the side, you're told another, maybe don't, hey, it's okay if you play in this, but even if you end up winning your way into LIV, that's when you're going to run into a trouble.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then, then all of a sudden but more importantly, I could see that frustration, but more importantly, I think the underlying frustration that's building among players is the lack of communication and the lack of leadership. So let's get into that PIP thing, because I think that's the other really big news that happened over this little holiday break that we had here.
Yeah.
So what this was and I want you guys to weigh in on this, because I think this is really key and important. We're going to discuss in a second whether we believe that $100 million that they put towards the PIP is well spent or not. But first, let's talk about
some ideas on that.
The speaking out. So just to bring you up to speed, the PIP is the Player Incentive Program. It's a program that was initiated a couple years back by the PGA Tour to effectively incentivize players to promote the tour and the tour's brand through a number of different efforts. There's a whole long list. And social media. Yeah. There's ratings.
Whoever moves the needle the most, right?
Right. It's the guys who
Tiger's won it since it came out.
Basically, Tiger wins
Tiger's
every
award.
Year. Yep. The shocker, or not so shocker this year, was that Rory topped the money list. But let's talk about the quote first. So this comes from Nate Lashley. He says, "How many golf fans actually know what the PGA Tour, what the PIP on the PGA Tour is? Would love to hear from golf PGA fans if they think this $100 million is spent well." And this is the real, where he really kind of fanned the flames a little bit. It says, "Time for new leadership on the PGA Tour." No pulling punches there.
Yeah, seriously.
He said, "This is an absolute kick in the face to the rest of the PGA Tour players. Now, I could see some guys having, whether it's founded or not, I can see some guys having that view on things, that this is a little bit of a kick in the face where it's almost like the rich get richer.
Yeah.
You've got some guys, like in Nick's position, lower level PGA Tour guys, fighting to stay on tour, fighting to make cuts, fighting to make a buck.
Right.
And then you're seeing guys who are making big money, Rory McIlroy
Is there
and
any
others,
surprising names
making
on
even
there?
more.
Is it like Minwoo Lee on there? Are there any surprising names, or is it basically just all of the household names?
I would say for the most part, it's all the household names.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can pull up this list here.
Yeah, because, it does seem like the same people every year. To his point, I get it. It's just like, what was the analogy? It's like the popular kids in school are just always getting rewarded.
Right. But to in the defense of the PGA Tour, it's the popular guys who are bringing the most brand awareness for the tour as well.
Understand?
So taking a look at this, and some, if you really want to go down that conspiracy theory hole, there are some who said it's very interesting that Rory received this massive payout, so shortly after basically leaving the player advisory board.
Yeah.
It's almost like them kind of bribing him back in some
Right.
way. But we're going to debate this in a second, but I think you can make a case for that Rory was probably the most visible and vocal for the PGA Tour, and that's what led to this. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's still he won on the DP.
He won that his fifth time.
What
else? What else was he big in the news for this year? The whole TGL thing kind of was the first news, him and Tiger announcing that league. And then you had him winning that. You also had him leaving the advisory board. And then the player, the Ryder Cup incident with LaCava, he was just always in the news.
So a lot of people think that the Ryder Cup incident with LaCava is what really got him over the line.
Which is nuts.
But look, it's driven largely by a quantified amount of social media shares, likes, etc. That's what they're quantifying, and that went crazy. It went wild on there.
I'm surprised Tiger, knowing how competitive he is, didn't just create something to one-up him. You know what I mean? Just go out there and smoke a drive out into the Jupiter Sound and just drop his club and walk off. It would blow up the internet. And,
a lot of people say even last year, Tiger only had a tweet one or two times and he won it.
Yeah. That was it.
Can you imagine being in a position now where you only had to drop a few tweets and you take home $15 million?
Yeah.
I can't.
That's
but
how you
looking
made
at this list, right? Mm-hmm. So you had Rory McIlroy who topped the list.
Yep.
He gets, of the $100 million, he gets a $15 million payout. Tiger Woods was number 2. $12 million. And then interestingly, John Rahm, number 3, $9 million. The rest of the list,
Masters, right?
It looks like all the, as you said, the household names.
The Speeds, the JTs.
One interesting one, though, Ricky Fowler, $5.5 million he took home. Now, if you remember, this was kind of Ricky's, in a lot of way, comeback year.
It was.
He was playing well again.
Because he was trending a lot when he almost won the U.S. Open. Remember that?
Yeah.
So his name was tweeted out a lot. I don't know how this algorithm works for this thing, but I mean, I could see that. Was Keegan Bradley on there? He was really big in the news with the whole Ryder Cup snub. No, he's not on there.
Keegan Bradley, let's see here.
Let's see if he made it.
I don't see Keegan on the list.
Who's the last guy on the
Brian
list?
Harmon, $2 million.
He was big in the news.
Yeah, of course. The guy
man,
won
he deserved it.
The Open Championship. But, it's good to see some guys like Jason Day back in the mix and things like that.
Here's my bone to pick a little bit, though. Do you know how many Instagram reels or tweets and stuff went out memeing and making fun of Brian Harmon's knacks standing over the ball?
Yeah.
You think stuff like that?
He laughed all the way to the bank, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. So, getting back to that gripe, though.
Yes.
The ultimately, the point that's being made here by Lashley is that it's $100 million. And in a world where the PGA Tour is trying to, A, be competitive monetarily with its biggest competitor now, which is LIV, and B, you have the PGA Tour, which has been lashed out against since Mickelson first kind of brought it to everyone's attention, basically saying that these guys are making a lot of money and they're not sharing enough of it with the players, right?
Yep.
The question then becomes, is this money well spent? $100 million that's just handed out at the end of the year to the guys who have effectively the most attention.
Yep.
Or is there a better way to spend it?
I think there's a better way to spend it. I mean, obviously, the first thing everyone thinks of is why not just add more to these events and make them like all designated events or elevated events, right? Where the purses are bigger and the guys can win more. But what the problem is there is that even if guys are grinding and they're still missing cuts, they're not going to earn that money. What if, like, on the other side of the coin is instead of that 100 million, or even included in that 100 million, maybe the PIP awards are a little smaller. I mean, does Rory need $15 million? No. So maybe Rory wins 5. Okay, great, good work. But maybe it's like if you compete in X amount of PGA Tour events this year, you get $100,000 in PIP. So you did your time for the year, you promoted it, you grinded, you went on tour, you paid for all your expenses, and you did your 20 events, you get $100,000. I don't know what the number is, $250,000.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, what a great incentive to be on this tour that's rewarding me for being here and playing on it.
Yeah, well, in a way, they're kind of doing that now because remember, they're doing with the elevated events where
you still have to win it,
or the designated events. But remember, Rory was penalized because he didn't play in all of the designated events. You have to play in a certain amount of them already. But I think I tend to agree that I think the where it's a bad look is the amount of money. I have no issues with them paying and giving bonuses for the guys who are, at the end of the day, we've said this over and over again, the PGA Tour is an entertainment product. The guys who are doing the faces that are promoting it, the guys, it's the guys the PGA Tour uses every commercial for every upcoming event. The household names are the guys that really move the needle for viewership for the PGA Tour.
No doubt.
I hate to say it, but guys further down the list, guys who are struggling to make the cut week in and week out, they're not the reason a lot of people are tuning in.
Right.
These guys are. And I believe they deserve to be rewarded for it.
Sure.
Where I think that it ends up being a little bit of a black eye and a bad look is when you have this rich getting richer type of thing.
Yeah.
And you have, again, it does feel a little bit like you felt like you almost paid Rory McIlroy $15 million to do what he would have already done anyway. Rory was going to tweet,
but remember,
and post on Instagram regularly.
Right, but the
same with Tiger.
Exactly. The biggest bone I have to pick is I don't know how. Like I said, I don't know how this little algorithm works. How the whole PIP thing, but even a negative thing can help him.
Yes.
So Rory missing that designated event was such news for the week. It probably helped him win $15 million.
Well, and I'll tell you exactly the key factors that are that included into the calculation of the PIP are internet searches. They're looking at how many Google internet searches that were done
on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're right. If somebody does something that's, effectively like bad news, and a lot of people say there's no bad press, but if someone does, it's going to increase their chances of earnings. It's also general awareness score among the U.S. population. So like household names, so they know who you are. Social media reach, the big just kind of keep getting bigger. And engagement metrics such as a number of unique news articles that include a player's name. So how many times it was reported on.
Yeah, our
so
website
like you said, you get into it with Joe LaCava and all of a sudden you're making money.
And speaking of laughing, who laughed all the way to the bank? Patrick Cantlay. Come on. Right. The internet reams him to this day still. Sorry, I caught you mid-drink.
Call me mid-sip on the Patrick Cantlay.
But, I'm not wrong because, other than that drama, I don't think many people were really talking about him. So
you're not wrong because
he's on the list.
Let's see how much Cantlay made $2 million on this list.
So you can rip me apart. I'll take the $2 million.
Exactly. It just, again, so that the PIP largely did that, but
maybe the drama did help the tour because drama sells. So maybe it all works in their favor.
I think, again, what it comes down to, and this is why we hear these things like these calls for new leadership and things like that, is that, to me, widely, the whole thing feels very directionless, right? The PIP money every year is kind of handed out in this quick announcement. And you know what it always is?
Like subtle.
It's this like nondescript like tweet with a screenshot of somebody's like Excel PowerPoint. Right. And when you do that, the whole thing feels a little bit like under the table, a little underhanded. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like this comes out with like a massive awards dinner.
Right.
And the guys are giving out.
It'd be like, here we go again. Number one.
Right. Right. So in a lot of ways, it just feels like that. But again, it just continues to feel like, where's the direction? Where is the, when you feel like what like real leadership is like whether they're delivering good or bad news, at least they're delivering the news, and you're getting the information. And right now we're getting rumors and drips and drabs of information, and then all of a sudden a bunch of guys make some money on PIP, and it may look, this has been going on for years. It's nothing new. It's just, again, the way that all this goes about it, I can see how some of this would leave a bad taste in some players' mouths.
Dude, imagine working at a major law firm and $100 million is given out to the top 15 lawyers, and everyone else in the firm gets nothing. And you worked all year just as hard. That's why I feel his pain.
But did you have as great of an effect? If the top 5 lawyers brought in the most revenue for the,
True.
I would expect them to get the bonuses.
Right.
So some people, I understand some people might get their feelings hurt. For me, it's not that any of this is,
I guess, work harder.
Inherently bad. It's just, I think it's the optics. I think it's the information and the way it's shared, and it's the general leadership that's leading to the unfortunate reality is I think there are a lot of, as a culmination of everything that's happened over the past whatever, has led to a lot of players losing a lot of faith and trust in the PGA Tour.
Yeah, definitely.
And I agree think that that's not something that they can afford right now.
Yeah.
And as we sit here with 31 days left until the framework agreement is supposed to be, something is supposed to be, brought to us and said, where's our information? Like, you should, at this point, be giving us weekly updates. Like, give us something.
I think the news...
Otherwise, you're going to drive more speculation.
The news is going to be electric coming out in the next 30 days. With, I think, LIV signings, I think you're going to hear that update on that. There's going to be some other bombshell news coming, so... Dude,
we are, as we sit here, we are just a little more than 30 days away from our first PGA Tour elevated event of the season.
The Hyundai?
What do you call it? Century.
They got rid of the Hyundai. The Century.
The Century is an elevated event.
Yeah.
So it's going to be massive purse, the biggest names, and we're almost there. And that's after this framework agreement is supposed to be solidified. So there's a lot left to deal with. So let's stop there. Let's do a quick break. Let's do a word from our sponsors. And I come back, and I just want to give an update and some thoughts on the $600 million deal that's sitting there for Jon Rahm.
Yep.
Because, again, like I said, with the position the PGA Tour is in and with so much up in the air, it does leave a lot of questions unanswered. All right, guys, as you know, we all aspire to outperform the player we were yesterday. That takes practice, commitment, and trusting the golf ball will perform the way you need it to on every type of shot. And the Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X offer advanced technology and performance that rewards your best swings and helps you shoot those lower scores that we're all after. Both models are exceptionally long. They deliver that consistent flight and feature unrivaled control. The difference is the Pro V1, it's the best combination of distance, spin, and feel in the game, and it offers that penetrating ball flight. The Pro V1X, it flies a little bit higher, it spins a little bit more in the short game, but it still gives you that low spin on longer shots to maximize your distance. You can go out now and find out which one is the right one for you between the Pro V1 and Pro V1X by visiting Titleist.com. And if you get the opportunity this summer, I'm going to tell you what, go out there, get fit, experiment with those balls, and see which one fits you. Either way, you're going to have a great, fantastic ball that you're putting in your bag.
All right, guys, you've been hearing us talk about the FootJoy Thermo Series for a while, and it's for a good reason. I mean, it is getting cold. In fact, I'm actually in the process of redoing my backyard putting green, and it's been an awesome project. And I don't want to go inside. I just want to watch these guys work, and I've just been bundling up with Thermo Series. I love it. I hate the cold, man. I know you do too. And if I could pack up and move to Florida right now, I would. But unfortunately, we can't. So we make it work, and FootJoy helps us. It's the most advanced apparel layering system in the game. It offers a range of layering pieces for all different conditions. I mean, you name it. Windy rain, that's probably my least favorite, but they got something for it. And I mean, it allows you to effortlessly adapt as the weather continues to evolve out there on the course. I mean, I love that it keeps you warm and comfortable, but it allows you to swing through. It's not bulky. It doesn't bundle up on you. It is the best apparel for all seasons. You got to check out Thermo Series, and as the day evolves, you can evolve with it. Check out the whole lineup at footjoy.com. And big thanks to Rapsodo. I mean, holiday season's here. People are looking for ideas. I know a buddy of mine, he actually bought MLM1. He reached out to me. Yeah. He says, I'm just getting into the game, and I wanted to start there, so he bought the original MLM. But I have a lot of whispers. I hear a lot of people, this is the season they're going to start building simulators in their homes, in their garages, and Rapsodo's got you covered there. So right now, they still have this incredible deal. It ends December 12th, 10% off the sim enclosures, and that's a pretty big savings on those things. So you can get an all-in-one bundles package. And by the way, we just did a full build. It's going to come soon to our YouTube channel, our main channel, where we built one, and we're going to be giving one away too. So stay tuned for that. Go check it out for yourself. If you can't wait and you want to build one, you're in the process of building one, I think bundles from Rapsodo is the way to go. Go check it out, rapsodo.com.
All right. So again, the ROM deal is something that we could do an entire other episode on. You know, it's actually at this point, I feel like it's funny. The news cycle moves so fast. It's a little bit older news now because this has been lingering now since last week. But again, it goes back to what I said before. The suspense is just like, it's becoming a little bit too much because we get these little indications and these things that, you know, it sounds like, oh, that could definitely be a viable rumor, and then no confirmation here or there. And we're just, again, wishing for a little bit more transparency. And I think that the number one thing that works against the PGA Tour right now is the lack of transparency. And that could be because a lot of them, they don't have the answers. Who knows? But the reports last week were that Jon Rahm had been offered $600 million to move to LIV. And what really amplified the rumors was that the money is basically, it's not what's holding the deal up. And that sounds right, because we've heard Jon Rahm speak before about saying money is not a driver for him. He's got more than enough money to live with comfortably for the rest of his life and his kids' lives. Yeah, he sure does. The way he wants to. Yep. You know what I mean? He had said, like, this is my lifestyle does not require that much more money. But what Jon Rahm had talked about before was that he had some hesitations and some issues with the structure of LIV. You know, whether that be the 54 holes or whatever it may be. So according to a lot of these reports was that he's very it's not done deal. Was that not a done deal yet, right? But he's closer than he's ever been before. And what was holding it up was that he wanted to modify the format of the league. And
we don't know what that means.
We don't know what that means. We don't know how he wanted it modified. I don't know if that meant he wanted it moved to a 72 hole per tournament, maybe to get official world golf rankings. I could see a guy like Jon Rahm, I could see official world golf rankings mattering to him more than another zero on the offer.
Sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. So according to that, any change of that magnitude would require all the approval of all of the captains. Again, this was also reported on by Flushing It. I could see that. That would be a major change. And no other player has had the ability or the leverage to change the structure of the league.
Sure.
So this would be a first. I think it would also potentially open the floodgates for other big names that they felt like, well, wait a minute. As part of my demands, it can be more than money. I can change the structure of the league. That changes things. But where we sit right now is that John allegedly has this sitting on the table. What's fueling the fire of saying that this rumors could very well be true is the fact that, as we reported on, Jon Rahm abruptly pulled out of Tiger's League, which has now been postponed another year. But before the postponement, he abruptly pulled out and was scrubbed clean of the TGL website. Mm-hmm. You and I also speculated on this weeks and weeks ago. If there was going to be another name to go to LIV, who would it be? And we said, top of that list has to be Jon Rahm.
No doubt, yeah.
Because after winning the Masters, he's now exempt for 4 to 5 years for all of the majors. So if you got a guy like Rahm, who's sitting there and thinking,
Masters for life, 4 to 5, the other majors, 4 to 5 years.
I've got at least 4 or 5 years of majors that I can play in. Yep. And you know where he finishes, he could probably push that exemption out even further.
Sure.
He's got young kids that he probably wants to be around more. Now, some people could say that the LIV schedule is stretching to be just as grueling as the PGA Tour schedule.
It is, but I think that's where the PGA Tour bit themselves with these elevated events because they forced these guys to be there. And I feel like they played more golf this year than ever.
Yes.
Right?
But I look at that and I could say, like, that would force some guys over to LIV. But then I look at the LIV schedule.
Well, now it's a little longer.
It's getting longer. And it's getting very international. Talk about being away from your kids. The travel, I looked at this thing. The LIV schedule that just came out had like 3 events in the States, and the rest were all over the globe.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure a Jon Rahm, his family's traveling with him everywhere. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it could be. But once the kids get to that school age and they're starting, not always always around. But regardless, you look at it and you say, I could see this. A guy like Jon Rahm, he's got the exemption for multiple years.
Yes.
He could have that big payout. That means he's set for life. His kids are set for life for money. And on top of that, if he could get what he wants and he's changing the structure, it also becomes a little bit of a better look for him.
Yep.
Because he doesn't look like yet another guy who just jumped for a big paycheck.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you know how much he would win on LIV? He'd win so much money over there.
No doubt.
And his team. and everything. Dude, for $600 million,
600 would be just the starting.
I mean, I'd clean porta potties for a living for $600 million. I'd do anything. That'd be insane. It's an easy yes for anybody.
It's silly.
So
money.
where's the yes, John? When is it coming? We're waiting on this.
One of his buddies had tweeted the other day saying, and it kind of indicated that the rumor maybe wasn't true, because he said, if $600 million was true, I'd drive over to John's house. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I'll drive over to John's house right now and force him by force to sign the deal.
Right.
Because it's so much money.
He'd set up families for generations.
But to me, like though, if this lingers longer or becomes just indicated as another rumor, to me, then now the pendulum, we've been talking about the PGA Tour and the troubles that it faces, right? The pendulum also swings the other way. And I start to look at LIV and I start to think they're also facing a bit of trouble because Greg Norman and others and Phil Mickelson, remember Phil saying his phone was ringing off the hook with guys who wanted to join LIV? We're now eking closer and closer to the PGA Tour season starting up in just a few weeks in January, and we haven't seen the big signings. Where are the other guys who are jumping ship? I
think the guys are spooked by the deadline. I think they're waiting.
I think
it's
so. But that's what it keeps coming back to. Like, we need visibility, leadership. Yeah. I'm sure we're saying this just as fans.
Yeah, right.
Can you imagine as a PGA Tour player who's sitting there and thinking, like, I need to know what's going on, guys. And or I'm hearing from one guy that I can play in this Q school, and then I'm hearing from another guy that might be facing fines and sanctions. Which is it?
Right.
But what I'm saying is that if we don't see something from the LIV side, there's going to be a large amount of, as much as we say about people distrusting and losing trust in the PGA Tour, you're going to see that with LIV too. We're going to stop listening to guys like Phil and these guys who speak up saying, oh, my phone's ringing off the hook. I got all these guys who want to join LIV, and then crickets and no new signings.
Yeah.
So I think both the PGA Tour and LIV, a lot of their future hangs in the balance of whatever Jon Rahm decides to do, and if anyone else is going to follow him. Because if Jon Rahm does sign and changes the structure, the floodgates could open.
They definitely could.
Imagine LIV saying, hey guys, we got John, we're moving to 72 holes, and we're going to reapply once again for official World Golf Rankings, showing the new structure of a four round tournaments.
And we're airing it on CBS.
Right. Now, can you
Then
imagine
all of a
that?
sudden
Now
it's
some
like-
guys would be like, oh,
Then
okay.
they're the Premier League.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I don't know.
Tough. It's tough. The firepower on the PGA Tour still, even with the Rahm move, you guys can debate me in the comments if you want. I still think it's
There's still
unmatched.
plenty of firepower on PGA Tour.
I
Absolutely.
think between
No doubt.
Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Max Homa, it just keeps going and going and going. Xander Schauffele, I still think unmatched on the PGA Tour. LIV would have to steal 5 or 6 more top.
I was going to ask you how many more it would take.
You take 6 top 15 guys over. Now we're talking about them being equal.
Where every team on LIV looks like a mini all-star team.
Right.
Is probably what their business plan is.
Right. That's what I would need to be
see it?
convinced that they had the same firepower. That doesn't mean it's not necessarily, and I know a lot of you guys who watch the podcast are also fans over at LIV and you watch it. It doesn't mean I'm not taking away that it's still an entertaining product. You still have some really great names over on LIV.
Yeah.
You're watching some great golf.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. I just don't think the firepower matches the PGA Tour, and it would take a lot more than Jon Rahm to make it match.
Okay.
So, again, a lot hangs in the balance, but ultimately what I think we're leading to is this idea that a lot of players and I think a lot of fans are losing a lot of trust in the entire system. We talked about the PGA Tour, but also in LIV, and unless we get some answers really soon, we're gonna start this. The rumor mills are just gonna keep flying, and it's gonna get to a point where it's gonna fall on a lot of deaf ears because people are gonna be like, I'm hearing things in every direction, and I don't believe any of it.
Yeah,
and that's not what any leadership ever wants.
Right.
So let's see. We're going to be watching it closely, of course, here on the podcast every single week. So make sure you subscribe. We'll be reporting it back as we find out more and more. And as we eke closer to the PGA Tour kicking off its season with another huge event.
And pay attention. This week, Tiger Woods is back, but the press conferences down at the Hero, lots going to be talked about of the stuff we just spoke about.
Especially with Tiger's new position on the player advisory board.
Yep.
Tiger is not going to be able to duck the questions. The questions are going to come to him. So, like I said, we will keep you guys abreast of everything that comes out. Make sure you subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.